formally record. And sounds certainly from the conversation we've already had that Rabbi Bruce is not an unknown face to people at least here at the moment. So it's my great pleasure to reintroduce Rabbi Bruce to London and to Edgware, where he used to be resident until he moved on to alternative pastures. I'm not going to say better pastures, but alternative pastures. Having been, I think your last school in London, your last position in London, I think was King Solomon, as far as I know.
Correct.
But before then, you've been very involved in education. Indeed, we also taught together at Stanmore Hayter, I believe. So other things to remember, bring back bits of your memory. And of course, you have an amazing master's in Jewish education, which we have to mention because a fellow student of yours is on the call at the moment. I did notice the name has appeared. So without further ado, so again, continuing our tradition, I have had a few apologies, which is why I've been asked to specifically record shares this evening. I know it caught a few people by surprise after having the first day of summer suddenly appears in September. So I think everyone's out barbecuing and enjoying themselves. But without further ado, I hand you over to Rabbi Bruce, who should be co-host, who should be able to share everything. And we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. What a great honor and pleasure. So thank you so much, Rabbi, for inviting me. You gave a very brief biography going back almost 10 years now. I've been in North America. First we were in Connecticut in the Northeast, and now we're in Ohio. And until recently, I was a head of school or principal of two high schools. And then I had the distinct pleasure this time last year, just over a year ago, to join the Rabbi Sachs Legacy. And I'm the executive director in North America. And I'm working very closely with Joanna Ben Arosh and the whole team, bringing Rabbi Sachs' legacy and perpetuating his memory across the country, across the continent. We are not talking about Rabbi Sachs today, though. But who knows? He may come in. He may come up. He often appears in all sorts of places. I am talking about someone who was incredibly impactful. Not always so well known, though, and perhaps we'll explore a little bit about that as we go through this evening's show. I'm going to share two things. First of all, a very short PowerPoint. So just let's hope I get this right. Okay. How's that? Everyone can see the PowerPoint? Fantastic. So Rabbi Nachman of Breslov was one of the most important but enigmatic Hasidic Rebbes in history, really. He was born in 1772, and his initial claim to fame was the fact that he was the great-grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. And that really placed upon him the mantle of royalty, Hasidic royalty. He was born in, and forgive me if I don't say, if I don't pronounce it, like Mezhebot, which was, of course, one of the early centers of Hasidut. And as you can see here, there's a map of modern-day Ukraine, and we are so much more familiar with these places over the past couple of years. And to see that Rabbi Nachman's life was essentially within the Ukrainian borders that we see today. These are the three main places that he really lived in. So he was born here, and he spent a lot of time here in Bratslav, which is called Breslov in Yiddish, and Uman. And you probably heard of Uman because Uman is the place that many of the modern-day pilgrims, and now they number in tens of thousands of them, come in just in a week and a half's time. Will be traveling to Ukraine to, even in the middle of a war, even in the middle of a pandemic. Tens of thousands of Jews will go and spend Rosh Hashanah in Uman, where Rabbi Nachman is buried. So he has, over the past 50 years, I would say, his influence and impact has expanded dramatically, and not without controversy. The Breslov Hasidim are not well known, or were not well known, largely because they were called the dead Hasidim. And why were they called that? They were called the dead Hasidim because they only had one Rebbe. Unlike most of the other Hasidic dynasties, Rabbi Nachman did not have a successor. He did have a primary student, Rabbi Natan, who we'll talk about in a moment, but he was not elevated to become the Rebbe in Rabbi Nachman's place. So as I said, though, he's become increasingly popular and influential over the past 50 years or so. So Rabbi Nachman, as you can see here, the Baal Shem Tov here, 1698 to 1760. His daughter, Ellul, married and had a daughter called Fega, and Fega was Rabbi Nachman's mother. So he was very much considered to be someone who could potentially take over the mantle of the leadership of the Hasidic movement, even though shortly after the Maggid of Meschwitz, which was who was the primary student of the Baal Shem Tov, after his passing, the Hasidic movement splintered into many different directions. Nevertheless, Rabbi Nachman was seen as someone who could be, if not the leader, one of the top leaders. That did not happen. Rabbi Nachman's teachings became incredibly controversial, and he was involved in all sorts of disputes with other Hasidic rabbis, which caused tremendous amount of stress and difficulty in Rabbi Nachman's life. He was extremely mysterious, interesting character, and we'll try and see a little bit more about that later on. He has been compared to a proto-Sigmund Freud. Rabbi Nachman undoubtedly had suffered from some form of mental illness, undoubtedly had some form of manic depression, some form of severe clinical depression. And he talks about that all the time. But he didn't have the medications that we have today. So he struggled with this throughout his life and wrote a lot of incredibly deep psychological Torah as a result of the reflections that he had on his own personal struggles. He has also been compared to Franz Kafka. And there are a number of ways. In fact, someone relatively recently, Roger Kamenetz, wrote a book comparing Rabbi Nachman and Franz Kafka, and called The Burnt Books. And there's a lot of similarities between the two. Franz Kafka, Czech author, famous Jewish Czech author, died young in 1924 of tuberculosis. He was around 40. Rabbi Nachman died of tuberculosis around 40. Rabbi Nachman, like Franz Kafka, told his literary executor, Max Brod, and Rabbi Nachman's executor, Rabbi Natan, to burn all of his writings after his passing. Both Max Brod and Rabbi Natan ignored the instructions. Luckily for us. So there's an awful lot of similarities. Finally, is that both Rabbi Nachman and Franz Kafka used fantastical stories to convey very deep and complex ideas. And so before we go on to the share, I just want to remind you, maybe this is the first time you've heard it, maybe you've heard it before, the story, one of the stories, which is an incredibly profound story Rabbi Nachman talks about, which is the Turkey Prince. Has anyone heard the Turkey Prince, that story before? So the Turkey Prince is a wonderful story, or chicken, turkey, doesn't really matter. Rabbi Nachman tells the story that a prince goes insane. and begins to consider he himself is a turkey, and acts as a turkey. He sits on the floor underneath the table, eating scraps from the floor. He takes off all his clothes. He basically has some form of mental breakdown and considers himself a turkey. And the king brings the best doctors in that society, and no one can help until a wise man comes along and says, "King, I can cure the prince." And the wise man comes in and takes off his clothes, sits underneath the table with the turkey prince, and starts eating. And the wise man says to the turkey, the prince, and says, "What are you doing here?" And the prince says, "I'm a turkey." And the wise man says, "Oh, that's wonderful. I'm a turkey too." And they eat together. And a little while later, the wise man turns to the turkey prince and says, "You know, I'm a turkey and you're a turkey, but you know that you can actually be a turkey and put clothes on. And so how about we both put clothes on and we can still be turkeys?" And that is what they did. A little while later, the wise man says, "You know, you're a turkey and I'm a turkey, but you know, we can still be turkeys. But if we come up to the table and eat with a knife and fork, we can be turkeys there too." And so the prince agrees and then comes up to the table with a knife and fork and eats as a turkey. And then finally, after many further discussions, the wise man is able to convince the prince that he's in fact no longer a turkey. So this is a cute story of like somehow the wise man, mimicking the prince, but it contains a very deep Hasidic, Kabbalistic idea, which is the idea of the Tzaddik, the holy man, Rabbi Nachman. The way to bring people up is to go down to where they are and together to bring people up. And this is a theme which we're going to talk about today. So the idea is quite simple but radical. Rabbi Nachman is teaching through this story that you might think that the tzaddik, the righteous man, role is to sit on a throne and to inspire and to have thousands of followers who look up to him, who learn from him. Rabbi Nachman says, no, that's not the real role of the tzaddik. The role of the tzaddik is to get dirty, is to get down in the dust and the mire where the ordinary people are. And by doing that, by getting in there with the people and by relating to them, ba'asher husham, where they are actually at, he can bring people to a higher spiritual level. So that's one idea, and we're going to hear a little bit more about that now. Okay, let's now move to the sheet. So the sheet, do people have the sheet I shared with you? But can you see it on the screen? There's one mistake on this sheet, but we'll get that in a moment. Okay, let's begin. Any questions at this point? Can everyone hear me? Is it clear? Any questions at this point? Okay, fantastic. Okay, so this Torah, this idea from Rabbi Nachman is called a Zamra. It's a quote from a pasuk in Tehillim, which means "I will sing." I will sing. Okay, and we're going to see what he means by "I will sing." This is one of the most profound Torahs that Rabbi Nachman ever wrote, and the Breslovers say that Rabbi Nachman instructed people, his Hasidim, to take this wisdom everywhere. So I'm going to teach to you today one of the most profound ideas Rabbi Nachman ever shared. And I know that the theme of the series for this Ellul and Tishrei is about change, is about can things really change. This is Rabbi Nachman's recipe for tshuva and change, not only of oneself, but of those around. So let us begin. It's fairly long, but let's see how we do. Da. No. So I'm going to stop there. That's one word, and I'm going to stop there. Rabbi Nachman uses the word da a lot, and he means it quite clearly. Know that what I'm about to tell you is of supreme importance, right? It's like not something that's interesting. This is not something that you should just take note of. Da, know this and internalize the lesson I'm about to teach you. Ki sarich ladun et kol adam l'kaf zchut. We know that there is a Mishnah in Pirkei Avot which said it is necessary to judge everyone meritoriously. Now, that's something we all know from first Perek and Pirkei Avot. He now takes it a stage further, which many commentators disagree with. Look what he says, and this is shocking. Va'afilu mi shehu rasha gamor, even if that person is a completely evil person. Someone who is a rasha gamor, it is sarich ladun et kol adam l'kaf zchut. Now, Perushim on this Mishnah are quite explicit. Yeah, judge people favorably, but don't be naive about it. If someone is completely evil, then we don't have to assume that they're doing good things. To the extent that, what does Rabbi Nachman really mean here? I mean, does he really expect us to find someone who is totally evil, totally bad, no redeeming factors, and somehow judge them favorably? So it's not, I don't have an answer to that, and it's always bothered me, and I think it bothers everyone reading this. But nevertheless, I want to emphasize the strength of Rabbi Nachman's teachings here. So this is what he's asking us to do. Sarich lechapes limsor ba eza ma'atov. It is necessary to search and find some element of good in that other person. Sheba opa hama'at eino rasha. Because in that aspect of their personality, that element of goodness, they're not evil. Va'al yedei zeh, and through this, shemotzei bo ma'at tov, and through this process of finding an aspect of goodness, v'dan oto l'kaf zchut, and then judging that person favorably, al yedei zeh ma'aleh oto be'emet l'kaf zchut. Through this process, you raise that other person in reality to the side of merit. Vayuchal lahashivo b'tshuva, and you are able to return that person in tshuva. Now we could stop here because essentially this is the idea of the whole Torah, main idea of the whole Torah. Rabbi Nachman, to summarize, is saying we have to judge everyone favorably, not just good people, not just ordinary people, not just people in the middle, but even the worst people in society. It is a responsibility, according to Rabbi Nachman, to judge them favorably. How do we do that? We find some aspect in their personality, and by finding that aspect of goodness in their personality, in that aspect, they are no longer evil. Through that recognition or through that process, we genuinely raise them up to merit, and then they are able to do tshuva. So I can see there is, so someone just asked us, Tina, you've asked, does he include I'm assuming you mean non-Jews. Is that right, Tina?
Yes.
Talking about,
sorry. Yes.
Yeah,
is he only talking about Jewish people, or is he including everyone in this?
That's a great question. Look, it's a great question. I think you can see on a simple level, it's clearly talking about humanity. Kol adam l'kaf zchut. Doesn't say Yisrael or Yehudi. Doesn't say a Yid. It says every person. I don't know whether Rabbi Nachman was really talking about non-Jews, but he certainly could have been. And the application here seems to wouldn't surprise me if he was. It's unclear. So I've just given you one of the major points of what we're discussing this evening. What do you think of that?
I think it's a great theory, but very hard in practice.
Okay, great theory, very hard in practice. Can you say more? Why? Why is it so difficult to do that?
I think when someone's...
Sorry, Tina.
No, go.
Hey?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. That I can see how important it is for a yid at this time of year to think he's not evil. Tina knows that I've asked in a previous year, why do we repeat things that are so bad in Al-Khait, which we haven't done? We know we haven't done, but Tina put me through paces to read the explanation given, I think, in the art scroll on that one. But in this one, I can see what you're trying to get at, what he was trying to get at, but I can't see that he didn't know of some knowledge. Was it to raise his followers to a certain level?
Yeah, that's interesting. We're going to see that I think it was to a certain extent to raise his followers. But I think touching back on the Turkey Prince story, I think he is saying right here, no matter how bad people are around you, there is always some hope. And there is always something that we can do to make a difference in them. We're going to see about ourselves in a minute. It flips it beautifully later on. But he starts with other people. What he's saying is that we have some extraordinary power to transform other people through a change in how we relate to them. And I've always been fascinated with this question. How does that work? How does that work? How does this work? It's like, okay, so I've judged that someone is a terrible person. You know, they're a thief. They do terrible things to other people. They're liars. They are just despicable human beings. Terrible people for whatever reason. And Rabbi Nachman is saying, find something good in that person. And through that process, remember, we've said nothing to the other person. We've done nothing to the other person. We've had no interaction. Simply internally, by changing our perspective on them, finding good, Rabbi Nachman is teaching, we are able, and let's look at the Hebrew again, v'yuchal lahashiva b'tshuva. You're able to return him in repentance. So this is a major theme. Let's read further. V'zeh bechinat. Rabbi Nachman uses the word bechinat to mean category. It's conceptually. This is a concept, and he uses this word again and again and again. There are many concepts that Rabbi Nachman uses in terms of his constructing his outlook. Va'od ma'at v'ein rasha. Okay, so this is, if you are going to flip down to the bottom of our page, this is a quote from Tehillim, Psalms 37:10, which is Va'od ma'at v'ein rasha v'hitbananta al makomah v'einenu. Now, the pshat of the pasuk is, and a little while longer, there will no longer be a wicked man. You will look at where he was, and he will be gone. What's the pshat of the pasuk? And if you look to the whole perek, what's it saying? What's Hashem saying? A little longer, there'll no longer be the evil man because Why is he no longer evil?
Why
is he no longer? What's that?
You would have done teshuva?
So you've been influenced by Rabbi Nachman. That's nice. No, because God's destroyed him. God has smote him. He's no longer there because he's gone, right? But Rabbi Nachman is saying, yes, that's what the pasuk originally means, is that, God will somehow remove these evil people from around us. But in fact, no. And he points out, and this is not, he doesn't quote this Gemara, but I wanted to remind you of this very famous Gemara in Brachot, the famous Gemara of Rabbi Nachman and Bruria, his wife. Sorry, Rabbi Meir and Bruria, his wife. There were these hooligans in Rabbi Meir's neighborhood who caused him a great deal of anguish. And Rabbi Meir prayed for God to have mercy on him, that that they should die. Rabbi Meir's wife, Bruria, said to him, "What is your thinking? On what basis do you pray for the death of these hooligans? Do you base it yourself on the verse as it says, as it is written, 'Let sin cease from the land,' which you interpret to mean that the world would be better if the wicked were destroyed? But is it written, 'Let sinners cease'? 'Let sin cease' is written. One should pray for an end to their transgressions, not for the demise of the transgressors themselves." So Bruria taught Rabbi Meir a really important lesson, is that we often want evil to disappear and we want evil people to be destroyed. We want to bring those evil people down a peg or two and take them off the board, as it were. But Rabbi Nachman, looking at this pasuk and then maybe having in mind this Gemara, is saying, actually, that is not what Hashem wants at all. Hashem wants for the person to be transformed so that the reality is they are no longer evil. There is no longer evil. There is no longer an evil person there because they've done teshuvah, not because they've been uprooted, killed, destroyed, taken off the board. That's not what Hashem wants, according to Rabbi Nachman, thinking about this Gemara. So, va'ad ma'at, look what he's doing here. Va'ad ma'at, and in a little while, right? He's saying, by focusing on the ma'at, the very small aspect of their personality, focusing on that, ve'ein rasha, v'hit bonanta al makomo ve'einenu. He's saying, focus on the ma'at, and in that place he's not a rasha, v'hit bonanta, and sort of consider, focus, think about his place, ve'einenu, and he's no longer there. There is some process by which an internal decision that we take about other people can transform them entirely, and gives them an opening to do shuvah. So let's carry on. This is what this pasuk means. You'll judge everyone according to merit. Even though you are not naive, you see this person is a completely evil person. Nevertheless, you have to search diligently, really hard, to find an element of good in them. Shesam ena rasha, that there they are no longer evil. This is what it means for od ma'ad ve'en rasha. So Sham Ena Rasha. So he basically keeps on going with this same idea. Okay. So before we move on to the next piece, I'm going to ask the question again. And this is not a rhetorical question. This is I don't have an answer to this. I mean, I have an approach, but I'd love to hear your approach. What is going on here? Is it realistic? Can I view someone? Let's be honest. Let's be clear here. We're talking about teshuvah. We're talking about reality. We're talking about people we know. Think about people we know who we consider to be very bad. And we all have those people in our lives, and hopefully they don't impact us too much. But we all have those people that we consider to be thoroughly unpleasant human beings. according to Rabbi Nachman, we can impact them in a positive way by changing our perspective on them. How does this work? Any thoughts?
Maybe it works in two ways. Maybe number one, it means that you interpret their actions differently, which is your reflection on what they're doing. So to a certain extent, their behavior may not be ideal still, but you are reflecting on it positively. So you're not viewing it as negatively as perhaps it was in the past. And secondly, is we often see that people rise to the occasion. Put someone in a position of responsibility, they will often rise to that responsibility, even if they'd never previously been viewed as capable of that. If you view someone as being a good person, they can rise to your, if they appreciate that you are viewing them differently, they will often behave differently as a result of that.
Okay, so I like what you're saying there, Rabbi, but my question is, though, that implied some interaction between the two. Especially your second answer implied some interacting, right? As in, you said that, I think I'm quoting you here, they appreciate how you change, although they've been given new responsibilities, they're rising to the occasion. Rabbi Nachman does not seem to be suggesting that they are having any interaction whatsoever. So I think you're absolutely right. And I think you're certainly on the right path here. I don't want to belittle what you're saying. My confusion is they're not having any interaction. There's no conversation. I used to think of you this way. I now think of you that way. Come on, you can do it. None of that. It's all internal, from the perspective of the person viewing the situation. How's it working?
Whilst I appreciate that, I'm not actually sure it is all internal, because if you see someone, your body language will be either, you can tell from your body language how someone's reacting. I'm not saying I'm viewing you differently. Just the fact that I wish you a good Shabbos, I'm viewing you positively, rather than last week I crossed the road.
Right. Okay. Right.
Rabbi, but wouldn't you say that by expanding the positive action that you have noted, you put his point of view that he feels himself slightly different? He's not that bad. He can't be that bad because he's feeling good at this point.
So how have you changed? Are you saying, as Rabbi Wilkinson has said, that by changing your behavior, you're changing how he acts in the world? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but that you have emphasized the good part that you have seen, and therefore his point of view will be slightly different. It will be enhanced with that good part to then attack the other part.
Right. So I think the point that Rabbi Wilkinson made just a few moments ago is absolutely right. I think also building off, Mr. Donofrey, are you, I'm presuming you're Russell's father? Yes. There you go. Yes. I was at university with Russell. Anyway, that was a long time ago. Okay, so let's go down to the bottom of our sheet. Back to Freud. Are there any psychologists here on the call today? No psychiatrists, any therapists? Wow. Okay. I'll try my best to explain this then. You've heard of Freudian projection and transference. Have people heard of this concept before? So in Freudian psychoanalysis, transference and countertransference projection are absolutely central tools in how a therapist works. Transference is the notion that it's a little bit like what Wilkinson was saying. I think it's a deeper idea. goes further, which is when we interact with people, there is so much else going on beyond verbal communication, right? That we are subconsciously, utterly attuned to the other person, which is why we can come into contact with someone and say absolutely nothing, but things we somehow feel different. And in a therapeutic setting, according to psychoanalytical theory, is that those feelings, let's say a therapist is sitting in a session with someone and starts to feel depressed or starts to feel agitated or bored or frustrated, is that according to psychoanalytical theory, that is transference, is that it's not actually what's going on inside the therapist, it's the messages, the psychological messages and energy that is being transferred from the patient to the therapist. And there's a notion of countertransference whereby it goes back from the therapist to the patient. But this swapping of feelings and emotions is very real according to psychoanalytical and analytical theory. The idea projection. So projection is how this happens. Is that according to those students of Freud, there's something called splitting and projection. Is that we often will feel a feeling. It's all subconscious. We don't really do this consciously, and we don't like that feeling. And so we will project it and put it on someone else. So we will say to them, sometimes quite explicitly, why are you so irritated, right? Why are you so irritated today? And the other person said, I'm not irritated. What are you talking about? And that's a very simple idea of projection. Is that really what's happening is that we don't like that feeling, and therefore we project it onto the other person. But that projection is not neutral. It can have profound impact. And the idea is that our non-verbal communication, our subconscious communication, it's been measured up to 80% of communication is non-verbal, can have a profound impact on someone else, which, by the way, makes Zoom and our interconnected world, on the one hand, is wonderful, but it's really, really hard for us to have right now the sorts of interrelationship and teacher-student share relationship in the same way that if we were in person, because I can see your faces, some of your faces, but it's not the same. I can't look into your eyes and you can't look into mine. And even if you can, we're missing something through a screen, right? So there's something about the world that we exhibit now where this transfer, this is why, by the way, and if you've seen this in your work, I certainly seen it in mine, being on Zoom is significantly more tiring than being in person, because we're working really, really hard to try and subconsciously work out where the other person is that we're meeting with. And it's much more natural in person. So being that this idea of projection and transference, Wilkinson mentioned it earlier, the non-verbal communication. I want us to go a stage further. Just before I start that, as a teacher, there was a concept that I once learned, and I think I learned it at the Tavistock, which is the Psychoanalytical Institute in the UK. I did a course for teachers and educators there. And there's this idea of valency. And I think that's originally from chemical bonds, but the idea of valency. As a teacher, it was always fascinating to watch how new kids come in to a situation and they will, within a day, find the other kids that are like them. Right? It's as though they have plastered on their head, I am this sort of child, and will find all the other children who are like that. So if you have some troubled children and you have someone new come in who's a little bit troubled, lo and behold, within half a day, they'll get together. No one's introduced them. No one's told them anything about each other, but there is something that we have, some incredibly powerful sense about connecting with people who are like us. So I think this is one level of what Rabbi Nachman is talking about. A second level is, and if you see the sources out here, is Pygmalion. George Bernard Shaw, My Fair Lady. Everyone will know about that idea. That beautiful line where Eliza said, "You see, really and truly, apart from the things anyone can pick up, the dressing and the proper way of speaking and so on, the difference between a lady and a flower girl is not how she behaves, but how she's treated. I shall always be a flower girl to Professor Higgins, because he always treats me as a flower girl, and always will. But I know I can be a lady to you, because you always treat me as a lady and always will." So George Bernard Shaw was saying that all the trappings of Pygmalion, of the ruse that the Higgins was trying to on Eliza through the dressing and the speech is irrelevant. How is it that she was perceived? That's the thing. And there's a very famous, if you go down to the next source, description of the Pygmalion study, a very famous study which has been repeated relatively recently. This was in 1968, but it has been done in the classroom recently, which is teachers and teacher expectations have a profound and important impact on how well students do. The Pygmalion study essentially tricked or lied to teachers about the level of the students coming in. They were solid C students, and the teachers were told that they were A students. The previous year they got C's. They came into a class, teachers were told these are top students. Lo and behold, a year later, these students all got top grades, top marks, right? They didn't know, right? So, and that's been repeated, it wasn't a one-off, is that the way that the teachers perceived the level of the students impacted the students. Impacted the students in a dramatic way. So going back to this idea, how we view other people through whatever subconscious mechanism, be it psychological, be it spiritual, we actually impact the people around us. So Rabbi Nachman is saying, let's go back to the top. Da, ki sarich ladon kol adam l'chazchut. The theme of your whole lecture series is about change, and can things really change? Rabbi Nachman says yes, absolutely. And it starts by judging other people differently. And it starts, and don't think that's just being cute and nice. It's absolutely transformational, Rabbi Nachman says. But now let's look what he does. Let's go down a stage further. Let's get deeper. V'chein sarich ha'adam lesob gam ba'atzmo. Not just other people, also ourselves. It's well known. Shesarich ha'adam lezaher ma'od liot b'simchat tamid. So I talked to you earlier about Rabbi Nachman and his depression. So you also may know there are a number of famous songs that we used to sing in youth groups. So one of them is Mitzvah Gadola Liot B'Simcha Tamid. Everyone knows that, yeah? Good. So I didn't just sing that randomly. Right? Rabbi Nachman. It's not just a cute song. Another song that we know. Kol ha'olam kulo geshes ha'meod, geshes ha'meod, v'ha'ika lo lefached klal is there was a very narrow bridge, and the ikar, the main thing is not to be afraid. That is a popular song and a misquotation, a terrible misquotation of Rabbi Nachman. Because he doesn't say lefached, he says lehit fached, to make oneself afraid. So these cute songs are deep ideas that have been plucked from Rabbi Nachman's Torah. Okay, and we start to see a little element of this now. He says, it is absolutely essential for people to be besimcha always. Now again, Rabbi Nachman, his expectations of us are extremely high. First, we've seen today, you expect to judge other people incredibly positively, even if they're the worst people in the world. Number one, we found that hard to understand. We're trying to get our head around it. Now he digs deeper. We've got to be happy the whole time. It's really important to be happy the whole time. Well, as I told you, this man, this brilliant, great tzaddik, suffered tremendously from mental health issues. So for sure, he was not just talking to us. He was talking to himself as well. Okay, let's carry on. Stay away from depression and sadness as much as possible. Okay, as we've explained many, many times. And even when we start to examine ourselves, and we look at ourselves and say, there's nothing good amongst us, in us. Okay, and he's filled with sin. And through this, he just wants to fall into depression and sadness. Because there's nothing good about me. I come to Ellul, I come to Rosh Hashanah, I come to Yom Kippur, and I start to really look at myself and I think, I'm not a great person. There's really bad things that I do and have done. And and it's all hopeless. And it's something that many of us recognize, not just Rabbi Nachman. What does he say? Afal chas v'shalom, afal PK, asur lo lipol mizeh. You are not allowed to fall into sadness because of this. Rak sarich lachapet l'ensor ba'atzmo edom atov. In exactly the same way as we started this Torah about other people, the thing that we have to do is say, when we start feeling this way about ourselves, what one thing about me is wonderful, is good, is perfect. Find one thing. And even though when we start to look at this good part of ourselves, and even though, nevertheless, that good thing, the moment we start to examine it, we start to see, I helped the old lady across the street. Isn't that wonderful? But why did I help the old lady? I helped the old lady because someone was looking and I wanted to look good in their eyes, or, because if I didn't do it, I would look bad. So we start to say, it's not so good. Whatever we do good, it's not so good. We minimize it. Everything we do has sort of ulterior motive. Everything we do. Even so. Is that okay? So there are lots of things that we do for multiple and complex reasons, but nevertheless, even for the worst motivations, we do many, many mitzvot that bring good into this world. And that is what we need to focus on. So there's lots more to say here, and I just want to focus on this here. Rabbi Nachman is teaching us a very, very profound idea. What he is saying is that if we genuinely want to change, then beating ourselves up is absolutely the wrong way to do it. Because once we go down that path, it is very easy to fall into hopelessness. And if we fall into hopelessness or depression, and we're not necessarily talking about a clinical diagnosis here, it's incredibly easy to move from that to a sense of complete giving up. What's the point? What's the point? If everything I do is tainted by ulterior motive, or for what's the point? What's the point of doing anything? And what he's saying, therefore, is like the Rasha out there, oftentimes, actually, we are harsher critics of ourselves than we are of other people. And therefore, the same process applies, is that when we look inside and say, can I truly change? Then it's easy to go from that question to, no, what's the point? I've tried it before. Or what's the point? When I look at what good I do in the world, I can rationalize it in negative ways. What's the point? Rabbi Nachman is saying there is something tremendously powerful about the good that we do, be it how we view other people, or be it how we view ourselves. Later on in the Torah, and we don't have time to go into this, because I do want to hear from you and hear any questions and thoughts. It's called about a Zamra. The whole Torah goes on to talk about notes, musical notes. Is that what Rabbi Nachman teaches is that when we find these elements, these notes, these dots of goodness, we can start to put them together into a melody that allows us to sing and pray to God. So Rabbi Nachman is saying, like a melody, if you play one note, it's not a song. A song is an amalgamation of notes in a particular order, in a particular way. Each note by itself is not impactful. When you join them together, they form a song, a melody, and we're able to sing. So Rabbi Nachman is giving us a pathway to address change, both in ourselves and in others, and also a way for us to avoid feeling despair. Because despair leads to sin, according to Rabbi Nachman. Essentially, what Rabbi Nachman understands is that really none of us want to sin. Is that we sin and we do bad things is because we don't really value ourselves, because we don't really think it matters, because we don't really feel that we can make a difference. And Rabbi Nachman is saying that clearly the fact that we exist in this world and we have interactions with the people that we have interactions with, be they good, bad, indifferent, is meaningful. Every aspect of our existence is meaningful. So right here, right now, according to Rabbi Nachman, the fact that we are all in this space, there is something profound going on here. And forget, me just teaching. It's not about me. It's about the fact that we are in this space together. The fact that Rabbi Wilkinson emailed me and said, would you like to do this? The fact that there is something going on now which can transform the world. And so we should take away, as we head into Rosh Hashanah in just over a week and a half or so, or just under 2 weeks' time, note that we have to judge everyone else to a certain extent, not naively, but to a certain extent positively. And then we have to work on finding that good in us in exactly the same way. And by focusing on these positive aspects of ourselves and others, we raise us and society to a new level. So I hope that this has given you a message of hope, of inspiration, of excitement, of possibility, because Rabbi Nachman, as I said to you at the very beginning, was a very deep and profound thinker, and he experienced some of the things that we all go through in a very deep way, and he knew what he was talking about. So I'd love to hear, before we close, any thoughts or questions from you.
There was a discussion between Isaac Luria, that's not of any distance, but he was a contemporary of Freud, and he felt He went on to run for the Russian government quite a number of hospitals and clinics relating to when people got affected by explosions or guns or whatever. But he said that everything in the brain is to do with chemicals. Luria, here we have a rabbi who's thinking it's to do with your own self, but it might be to do with what chemicals you have to release.
So I'm definitely not an expert in this area, and I can't comment. I do know, I believe, again, that, for example, modern antidepressants work for some people, and it's a chemical-based treatment, but we don't know why. Right? We know they work, but we don't really know why they work. It's not clear there's a direct correlation between increasing serotonin, for example, in the brain and why it works for some people. We don't know why. So the point is that science says many things, doesn't necessarily have a clear understanding of the process. Science also says, by the way, that it's not in any way to deny the chemical or neurological or electrical aspects of our minds, but we believe in Judaism that our spiritual essence has a profound impact on our physical. And can I prove that scientifically? No, but I can also say science doesn't have all the answers either in that regard.
But I believe the followers of Rab Nachman are very liberal as regarding the chemicals they introduce to their bodies.
well,
I think there is a minority that's tainted. I don't think it's the majority.
My Rebbe, who David Ebner from Yeshiva HaMivtaz it was, and now this recently retired Rosh Yeshiva of Eretz Tzvi, who taught me this Torah many years ago, and taught a lot of Rabbi Nachman's Torah, was not so in favor of the modern Nachmans, and he once famously said, "What does it mean that I have that big kippah, na?" And he said, it means nothing. So is it the modern understand? It is difficult for certainly what goes on in Uman over Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur amongst the minority of the people who are there is somewhat questionable, but others find it a very profound spiritual experience.
Okay, good.
Gert, I really do appreciate you sparing time during your busy schedule during the day at a weekend. So thank you very much for sharing and elucidating Rabbi Nachman's Torah. I think, is that an animal in your background? A cat or a dog?
Yes, there is. There is. Well spotted through the blur. There is indeed. Yes.
So I apologize about that distraction, but it's a real distraction. But Shkoyach, again, thank you very much on behalf of the shul. We really do appreciate everything you shared with us. Wish you and everyone, because it seems over a good venture, you should be healthy. You continue to bring some simcha to us and make sure that we not only look at ourselves, but look at everyone very positively. And as we keep saying, that will certainly change the world. And that's really what we need to do at the moment. So we've got a lot of work cut out over the next few weeks. Rabbi Bruce, thank you very much. We look forward to welcoming you back into the United Kingdom and on all our way to Eretz Yisrael, Bezos Hashem, very soon. Take care. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very interesting. Thank you.
Really enjoyable. Thank you.
Thanks.